So common spinal conditions and movement contraindications. I'm not going to go through this in a ton of detail. I'll let you read this too. But I put in the 8 most common things that you'll see walking in as a Pilates instructor anywhere you are. Right? So disc dysfunction, degenerative disc, spinal stenosis, spondylolisthesis, acute facet pain, sprains and strains, sacroiliac pain, and osteoporosis. So I think they're all really important to be aware of, and I put the movement contraindications for each. So discs is loaded flexion. So all that loaded stuff you're not going to do. And this also, it's also important. People say, oh yeah, I had a back problem, but I don't have it right now. Well, when did you have that back problem? Oh, 10 years ago it started. Okay, and have you had any episodes since? Yeah, I have an episode like every month.
Oh well, it's still there.
Then you still have a problem, right? Oh no, it's fine now. I can do everything. It's fine, right? So in your head, you're going, I think we better not load that spine, right? A lot of times those recurring things are either an instability or a disc, most likely, right? That a disc is bulging and kind of reducing and bulging and kind of reducing, so they get better and worse. Sometimes it bulges and stays out, but the muscles stop spasming. So you put them in some positions in loaded flexion and heavy work, and you're going to blow that disc. They're going to blow that disc, and you're going to help them do it. So my goal is always to keep people safe, right? They're exercising to get better. Why exercise them in a way that may cause pain if you can exercise them in a safe way? They're going to make their mistakes out there. They're going to bend over and twist and pick something up out there. So your job is to get them as strong as you can safely, not to sort of see how much you can push them right into the contraindications. Degenerative disc disease is the same for the disc bulge and herniation loaded flexion because they basically have very little space between their vertebrae, right? And those discs are already compromised and getting squashed and deteriorating, so you don't want to mess with those. Spinal stenosis is a narrowing of the spinal canal or a narrowing of the foramen where the nerve comes out. And we can show you that more. There's a little skeleton behind you, Sarah, that has the nerves on it too, so we can look at that closely and when we talk about the spine and show you how the nerves exit and everything, so you really understand what that means. So spinal stenosis is often caused by a disc herniation. Or even a disc bulge. So if somebody has spinal stenosis, chances are you're not going to want to flex them either.
Okay.
But if you can't flex the spine and you can't extend the spine, what the heck are you going to do with that spine?
Exactly.
Right?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
A lot. There's a lot you can do with that spine. So we'll show you what you can do with that spine. And then spondylolisthesis is a slippage of one vertebra forward on another, right? So that gets worse with extension generally, most of the time. Sometimes it's an anterior slip and then flexion would bother it, but sometimes these people actually get relief from flexion, as long as there's no disc problem also. And then Facet Syndrome is basically the joints of one vertebra hitting, it's where the joints meet, the one above and the one below. People get kind of stuck with Facet Syndrome, so extension. If they can't move properly between those joints, they can't extend properly. But you might also see that with a lateral flexion, so side bend. They might be stuck trying to go to one side, but they move fine to the other side. Sometimes that's just a little facet joint issue where the vertebra, the facet joint is not sitting properly, so it's bumping. And then sprain strain. I don't recommend loaded flexion just because you don't know what's caused that stress. I let that sprain or strain go away. If you're sure it's a muscular thing, they'll be fine after it's gone. But for the time being, I would be really careful with it. And we'll talk about more the posterior longitudinal ligament when we look at the spine again, so you know. But if that's not working properly, that ligament holds the spine from the back, and so if that's not working properly, that's why that's what's strained. A disc can bulge out because it's not doing its job. So you want to be careful there too. And then we have the sacroiliac laxity and pain. So loaded flexion, but as a lower and the sacrum. So if I sit just a little bit down, I'm loading my sacroiliac joint. It's a little V at the bottom, right? So that joint is only ligamentous between that and my ilia. So when I sit and go like this, it opens. So anytime I'm loading even a tiny bit, I'm irritating an irritated joint if it's a problem for somebody. So, and also strong abduction and adduction can affect it too. And we'll talk about that more too when we go through it. And then osteoporosis also sort of includes osteopenia. So you don't want to do spinal flexion. It's all contraindicated except for unloaded flexion, or what we've shown you to be sort of unloaded or less loaded. That includes upper abdominal curl. So upper abdominal curl loads the thoracic spine. Thoracic spine is where we have most of our fractures with osteoporosis. And when they do the scan, they actually don't scan the thoracic spine. They scan the lumbar spine because it's easier to see. There's no rib cage there. So if they scan the lumbar, but we know that if they scan the lumbar, the risk of osteoporosis in the lumbar is less than that in the thoracic. So if they see osteoporosis in the lumbar spine, it is worse in the thoracic spine. So we don't do any head-up exercises.
Okay.
And now there's some really good tools online. There's a fracture risk assessment tool that you can pull up. The American Osteoporosis Society, I think that's what it's called, has a really nice fracture assessment tool. If somebody brings in their scores from a bone scan, or they can do it themselves, they can go online there and they can see what their fracture risk is based on their lifestyle and their score. And so they can come in and say, well, I have like a 2% of a fracture risk. Then you know, okay, they're not really at risk, so we're fine. If they come in and say, I have a 90% chance of a fracture, you are going to be so careful with that person, right? So, and that's just for the spinal fractures. Osteoporosis can affect the wrists and the hips and the rib cage. So people with osteopenia and osteoporosis don't do well when they have a lot of pressure on their ribs. So working on the arc and the barrel is probably not your best bet for those people. Yeah, so we'll talk about that when we get to those two. And then I just put a little blurb on designing the Pilates session. Things to consider is the client's history and goals, past or present injuries, the age of the client, the current activities, and the posture. So all those things we will discuss with probably each exercise.